That's it, guys. It's over. Before it even began, seemingly, Concord is suddenly getting pulled offline with Sony promising full refunds. This very, very, very rarely happens, right? Where you have a AAA game, I think in recent history, Crucible, which was a game most people forgot about from Amazon Game Studios, is one that had this happen, where they spent years and years, tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars developing a game. It releases and it's so bad that within a couple of weeks it's gone. In Crucible's case, it was a free-to-play, but they did refund people because, of course, free-to-play people were buying stuff in the cash shop. And Concord getting the same treatment, this time from Sony. So we'll read this real quick, but the writing was on the wall for this one. Like I said in the original videos, there seems to be no real save in this game because the problems are with the mindset that created it, as well as basically just everything about the game is from mediocre to bad. There's no real redeeming qualities to this other than, like, the game has nice graphics, which is not really a selling point in 2024 because that's kind of the default. Even AA games now have nice graphics unless they go stylized. PlayStation Hero Shooter Concord will be taken offline on September 6th, 2024. So in 3 days. How long's it even been out? It can't be longer than... when was it actually released? Let me just check so we can report this to the Guinness World Records, because holy shit. Oh, you can't even buy it anymore on Steam. Like, it's not... So they've taken it off the store as well. The game came out on August 23rd, so they didn't even make it to 2 weeks. Man, that's fucking sad, right? Announcing on the PlayStation blog, director Ryan Ellis said, while many qualities of the experience resonated with players, did it? I mean, he's obviously not going to come out and say, yeah, well, fucking shit, weren't it? Like, yeah, it's bad. We also recognize that other aspects of the game and our initial launch didn't land the way we'd intended. This is like the most PR way to say, yeah, we're fucked, weren't it? It was just really fucked. But he's not going to come out and say that, obviously, but it didn't go the way we intended. They wanted this game to be gangbuster numbers. They wanted this game after, you know, even if you're doing like a low ball estimate, bear in mind, they bought the studio. They worked on the game for 8 years and then obviously did marketing and things like that. Low estimates, tens of millions of dollars. High estimates, what it's going to cost them in total. People have been ballparking like $100-200 million. This was a game that they fully expected and wanted hundreds of thousands of users day one, millions of copies sold. And according to some estimates, there was like 25,000 units sold, which is... I don't know, bro. It's just so pathetically embarrassing. What can you really say? Concord will therefore be taken offline so Sony and developer Firewalk Studios can, quote, explore options, including those that will better reach our players. What fucking players? Is my question. What players are you talking about? But obviously, the idea here is... there's two scenarios in my brain that would make sense for Firewalk and Sony as well as for Concord. Option one is sunk cost fallacy. And they think because we put so much money into this, why don't we just, you know, take it offline so we're not wasting resources running a game nobody's playing, stop people buying it, refund everybody, put like a few $100,000 more in, and try to get the game to a state where we can launch free to play and see whether we can save the game or not. Change basically what's possible to change in a short period of time. Listen to feedback, of which there's not that much great feedback about the game because not many people even played the fucking thing, and see if they can claw something back. Or explore options is code word for we take the game down and try to forget it ever happened and hope we don't get fired. Whoever decided to launch this and put all this money in and things like that. So they're the two options. I don't think there's any world in which this goes back into some kind of like super lengthy development phase, and they try to, you know, re-release the game with a box price, that would be the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. There's no second bite of the apple with something like this. Once it's already released and it has this tainted aura about it, I wouldn't be surprised if that is the only factor they consider that says, let's not try to bring this game back out with a free-to-play or anything. Let's just take the L and move on, just because how tainted the name is now. Because everybody, I guess it goes in both ways, right? Everybody knows Concord exists, at least on social media. So you'd get loads and loads of clicks and everything like that if you did relaunch it. But how many of those people would actually try it? It would have to be a really good game once they re-released it for people to even bother. Because like I said, the biggest reason that this game failed, first and foremost, obviously the aesthetics and the fact nobody wanted this was an issue for getting people in the door in the first place to try the game. But the critical factor is the game isn't good. Because obviously a game can have zero marketing. Nobody can care about the game whatsoever. And if people play it and they're like, oh, it's actually really good, and the word spreads and people start making videos and people see their friends logged on and playing it, and they see the numbers start to rise and it rises the leaderboards of like the Steam front page and whatever else, like that's how indie games can release with no hype whatsoever and then 3 days later be the top selling game of the month. Like that can happen. But when people play the game, when the marketing's bad, when the game looks bad, when nobody wants the game, and then when some people do play the game and it fucking sucks and they leave, obviously there's no returning for that. There's no mechanism by which this game that already looks bad and puts people off based on the aesthetic and the character designs and things, there's no mechanism of comeback for the game. Like if everyone who bought the game and everyone who tried the game continued playing and kept saying, oh, it's actually really good, other people would eventually try it. And especially if it's free to play, because there's no cost, there's no barrier for entry, right? You can just be like, oh, you know, even if it's bad, maybe I'll have a good time playing a bad game, which you can sometimes. Or maybe if my friends are going to play it, we'll just have a good time regardless because it's something our friends are doing together. But even if this game released free to play, people would have quit in droves almost immediately because the core gameplay is not good. It doesn't do anything that makes it stand out in a positive way compared to any of its competitors. It's basically like a bastardization between like a real competitive FPS like Counter-Strike and then sort of like gamey like Valorant with obviously hero abilities and things, and like a mix between like the fast-pacedness of Call of Duty. But it does none of the things that all those games stand out by in a good way whatsoever. It's just kind of like, oh, we've took a bit from everywhere. None of the features can stand alone on their own. So with that being the case, will this game re-release as a free-to-play? Who knows? This could be another crucible with Amazon Game Studios where they said, oh, we're going to take it back into beta, you know, get back in the lab, put pen to paper, try and figure things out. And then like a couple of weeks later, they just kind of silently said, oh, you know, the game's closed and we're going to be allocating those resources to our other games, all of which also have kind of failed. At least Sony have got some good games and some upcoming releases and third-party releases on the PS5 and the PS5 Pro to fall back on. They'll be okay, which makes me think that they'll probably not try to do anything with this moving forward. But I also think a lot of companies that had put this much money into something would try to give it another shot. But then again, the PR nightmare of doing a second release and it getting panned again and doing really bad again and then having to walk it back and remove the game again because they obviously don't want to, you know, run resources into the ground, operating a game that nobody's playing and just being the laughing stock of the internet, basically. Maybe that's enough to dissuade them from bothering. The game will be removed from sale immediately, so yeah, that's why I couldn't find it on Steam a second ago. And anyone who purchased on the PlayStation Store or PlayStation Direct will be refunded to their original payment methods. So it's just an insta refund for everybody. Those who purchased on Steam and the Epic Games Store will be refunded in the coming days. Physical refunds are a tad trickier, but players can check with individual retailers to obtain a refund. Sony will presumably organize a system with them itself that allows all refunds to be processed fully. Once refunded, players will no longer have access to the game, Sony made clear. And then obviously it goes down in a couple of days anyway, so nobody will have access. I imagine there will be some people who just don't go and get a refund. It's good that the refunds on the digital systems are all going to be automatic, because that's always a concern. whenever anything gets no issue refunds on stuff, there will be some people that just don't refund. They don't see the notice, they're lazy, and then they just lose that money basically. But it's good they've done that all automatic essentially, with the physical just being that limiting factor. And what could they do in that case? There's no way to really deal with that. That being said, some people are going to say, oh, it's cost Sony even more money to refund this game, so we got them on that one as well. This would probably cost them a couple grand. Like, I'm not... it sold so embarrassingly bad that it's not going to cost almost anything to refund people in the grand scheme of like how much it costs to run the game and how much it costs to make the game. That refunding them is like... this is not even really goodwill on their part, because it's such a small amount of money. It's like petty cash, basically, in like an average mom and pop shop business that they've just got sitting around in the cash register. That's how fucking embarrassing the player numbers were, especially because if anyone bought on like Steam or whatever, they would have refunded this game almost immediately, as I did. Concord arrived August 23rd, meaning it has been removed from sale just 11 days after launch and taken offline for all players a mere 2 weeks after. This has got to be some kind of record for a AAA game, especially something that's cost this amount of money. That's fucking wild. Even those who bought Concord will no longer be able to play on after September 6th. There's at least like 4 or 5 people that are really unhappy about this. And I will just say, because it is worth mentioning, one man's trash is another man's treasure. There will be people who played this game and for whatever reason they really liked it, and then the game's being taken away from them and they're going to feel hard done by. I also can guarantee if I go on social media right now to record like a funny video, which maybe I will in a couple of days, maybe I'll collate all of the things that go on in social media about this, specifically pertaining to there will be people that are going to try and narrative this one out and say the game failed because of the hate mob and the game failed because of X, Y, and Z, never pointing the finger to the fact that the game is shit and the game was just a muddy mess in terms of like what people thought it was going to be from initial marketing, that the marketing made the game look unappealing as fuck, and then there was no saving grace of playing the game because the game sucked. There will 100% be people posting on social media after this announcement saying that this is someone else's fault, this is the gamer's fault, this is X, Y, and Z. Maybe this will be an article from one of the big game publications, because obviously this has kind of been something they've been alluding to with other articles that we did cover on the channel. Its launch was nothing short of disastrous, with analysts telling IGN it had likely sold as few as 25,000 units. It debuted to a tragic 697 peak concurrent players on Steam, a number that made the 12,786 players of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which was dubbed a disappointment by Warner Bros. Discovery boss David Zaslav and caused a $200 million hit to revenue, look like a titan. This comes after 8 years of development, presumably tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars spent by Sony, a company already said to be shifting gears away from a live service heavy future. So Sony must be one of the few companies that is doing this then. Because you see other companies, Warner Bros. Is one of them, by the way, that even after the failure of Suicide Squad and the runaway success of the Harry Potter Hogwarts Legacy game, they were the motherfuckers saying, actually, single-player games, not really it. Live service games, that's where the party is. And we've been through this a million times. We know why. It's because to make a single-player game that makes loads of money, actually make loads of money, it's like a huge risk. It's a huge investment. Because if you get that game wrong, you're going to spend, tens of millions of dollars as these big AAA companies making something that just has a box price. And it's going to be hard to recover that money, especially when there's proven models of making money off people with derivative, things like mobile games, right? The formula's solved. And they make loads of money for very little invested, which makes them basically perfect, which is why they go for live service games as well, because they've got the model. They understand that they need a fraction of the player base to just spend, over what they would have spent on a single player game with that initial box price, and then they'll make their money back and more. And they usually cost less because they just make a gameplay loop and then people play that loop repeatedly, as opposed to having to have content that stretches across 40, 50 hours of a campaign or something that needs to stand on its own against fantastic other single player games. Whereas if you just make a free-to-play game with like a heavy cash shop, that seems way safer to these people. So of course that's what they want to go for. But it's cool if Sony are moving away from that, because you know, Sony does have a lot of good games to release, and some of the top single-player games of the last like 5-10 years have been Sony games. So yeah, that's a good idea. Sony president Hiroki Totoki committed to launching just 6 of 12 live service games in development, and one based on The Last of Us has already been cancelled. The crowd goes mild on that one. So this is what they initially posted. I will just read this. This is from Ryan Ellis, game director, Firewalk Studios. Concord fans, we've been listening closely to your feedback. Concord fans. Yeah, okay. We've been listening closely to your feedback since the launch of Concord on PlayStation 5 and PC, and want to thank everyone who has joined the journey aboard the North Star. Your support and the passionate community that has grown around the game has meant the world to us. However, while many qualities of the game, the experience resonated with players, we also recognised that other aspects of the game of our initial launch didn't land the way we intended. This next sentence we went over, just talking about the resonating of features and it not landing. While we determine the best path ahead, Concord sales will cease immediately, and we'll begin to offer a full refund for all gamers who have purchased the game for PS5 or PC. Goes over the refund. So there is really nothing else other than the last line. We'll keep you updated, and thank you again to all the free gunners who have joined us in the Concord galaxy. It's so easy to clown on this game because it's just right there, and the game deserves to be clowned on. But at the same time, it's sad for specifically one reason that this game didn't do better. And that one reason is this tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, and a studio that look like they've got talent in terms of what they can produce in terms of music, animations, graphics. These resources, both people, man hours, and money, could have gone into one or multiple other games that weren't live service slop designed to basically just earn Sony a big wedge of money every month from a perpetual milking station, basically. We could have got 1, 2, 3 maybe really good single player games or local co-op games or something like that. But instead, we got Concord, a game nobody wanted, nobody asked for, and we've seen what that amounted to, right? A just complete abject failure. So that's the only sad thing about this. And of course, some of these people are probably going to lose their jobs. But that's not our responsibility. You know, it's entirely on the people who hired them, made them make this game and release the game in the way that it was. So there we go. That's Concord. It's fucking Jova, fully Jova. And in a world where we see many things cancelled, shows that people love that do great, but maybe not as great as the company wanted to, looking at you, Netflix. Games that do have a player base, but they're not earning as much money as they could, so they get closed. In that world, Concord thoroughly deserves what it got. So there we go. Thanks for watching as always. This will probably be the last time I ever talk about this game unless they re-release it, which will probably be to the thanks of people that are watching the videos, because it seems like I've kind of beaten this horse to death. But then again, this horse released with no leg, so it was a real easy target. But there we go. Thanks for watching as always. Go buy GamerSups. I'm fairly sure they have like a big promotion coming up. I'll probably talk about it in another video. But there's a link in the video description. I think you get a 10% discount if you use that. And I'll get a kickback if you do. So you save money, I earn money. And hopefully I'll see you on the next video. Peace.